Hello, and welcome to Generational Inspirations. This is Sandra, your host. The title of this lesson is Sister Sister. Have you ever watched a bunch of little girls together? Perhaps you peeked in on a slumber party or listened in on a girl's three-way phone conversation. Maybe you were walking in the mall and saw, or rather heard, a group of teenage girls trying on clothes, lip gloss, or makeup, and in spite of all the girly giggles, you found yourself smiling at their antics. Maybe you were driving downtown on a sunny day and saw a group of women gathered together, having coffee and just chatting away. You wonder, what in the world do they talk about? And how can they go on for hours at a time? Well, the answer is very simple. Girls love being in the company of other girls. Whether they are 5, 15, or 55, girls just love getting together and doing girly things. It's been a mystery to men for years how two women who never met can bond together while sitting in a doctor's office or standing in a grocery store line. In this lesson, we will examine relationships between women. We will see how they respond when faced with hardships. We will see how they celebrate. We will see how they compete. As usual, we will visit with the ladies of the Bible first, then we will travel through time to visit with some extraordinary sisters of today. We will not always be discussing blood sisters. Remember, all women are sisters. The first set of sisters we'll talk about can be found in the very first book of the Bible. Genesis 16, verse 1, introduces them as Sarah, the wife of Abraham, and Hagar, Sarah's maid. Now, Sarah and Hagar probably had a pretty good relationship until Sarah comes up with the bright idea to give Hagar to Abraham, her husband, as a surrogate mother. Now, let's just stop right there for a minute. Girlfriends, never give your man permission to sleep with another woman. That's insanity. However, back in the time of Sarah and Hagar, it was a common practice to have your slave or your maid give birth to your husband's child by placing the birth mother between your knees as she gives birth, therefore making the child your own. You see, Sarah was barren at the time. This probably worked out well for some women, but not these two. Once Hagar got pregnant, and she got something that Sarah wanted, which was Abraham's baby, she started to show her true colors. She began to look down on Sarah and to disrespect her. Now Sarah, in true sister girlfriend style, wasn't having none of this and ended up kicking Hagar out in the street. Hagar ends up returning after being directed by an angel of God to go back and submit herself to Sarah, because she is the slave. She's not the other way around. She does give birth to Ishmael, Abraham's son. However, the two never reconciled their differences, so that just ruined the friendship and sisterhood between these two women. To make matters worse, Sarah ends up having her own son, Isaac. The battle begins over the boys. Isaac is Abraham's promised son, yet Ishmael is also his son. What are the girls to do? Well, since two hens can't sit on the same nest, Hagar and her son once again was sent away. A footnote we could add here is this. Sometimes when two women get to cooking up something, the recipe don't always turn out right. Now, girls, we can't go out like that, bickering and chick-hating. We can see that men folks just grinning and saying, ain't that right? Can't have two cooks in the kitchen. The way to stop them from talking like that is to come back with two sisters who do bond together and come out of a tough situation. These two lovely ladies can be found in the book of Ruth. That's right, you guessed it. They are Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi had lost her husband to death and subsequently lost her two sons as well about 10 years later. Back in those days, women were pretty much up the creek if they had no man to help them, as it was in every sense of the word a man's world. Without husbands, Ruth and Orpah was left with their mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi tells the girls to go out and leave her and make their way in the world. Well, Orpah did leave. However, Ruth stayed behind with Naomi, and they bonded together with some of the most beautiful words ever recorded in history. Listen to Ruth as she makes this profound pledge to her mother-in-law. Wherever thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodge, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. And that's Ruth 1, verse 16. As said before, the bond between women is a mystery to many, and this one was no exception. Not many young women would have stayed behind with their mother-in-law after their husbands died. In fact, if we're honest, not many women want to be around when their husband is alive. They don't want to be with the mother-in-law. You know, if you want to laugh, you start hearing mother-in-law jokes. But these two women were bonded in love for each other. They wanted to see the best for each other. And guess what? The best happened. Now Ruth and Naomi stuck together through the hard times. When Ruth ate, Naomi ate. They looked out for each other. With Ruth's youthful beauty and Naomi's shrewd brain, their story ends in prosperity. Ruth captured the eye of their kinsman Boaz, and Naomi tells Ruth how to get her man. Ruth now has a husband and Naomi have a home, and they accomplish it by working together. This is not the only example of sisters uniting and helping each other through difficult times. Fast forward in your Bible to the New Testament, and we'll stop at the first chapter of Luke. And we'll find two amazing ladies, one very young and one well stricken in age. In other words, she was a little long in the tooth. They share a common bond in spite of their age differences. They are both with child. Their names are Mary and Elizabeth. They were cousins. Here again is that mysterious bond between women. On the surface, they appear to have very little in common. Mary is young, Elizabeth is old. Elizabeth knows what it's like to have experience with a man. Mary is a virgin. Mary is not yet married. Elizabeth has been married a very long time, yet they bond and celebrate over a very special fact. Both of them were pregnant with very special children. They are both well blessed and highly favored among women. The Bible records that Mary was not yet showing when she visits her cousin Elizabeth, and she stayed with her during Elizabeth's last months of pregnancy. Can you imagine the good girl talk they must have shared as they prepared for their babies? Imagine Mary helping Elizabeth with her cooking and laundry as Elizabeth grew bigger and more awkward with each passing day. Imagine Elizabeth giving Mary sage advice about some things to expect for marriage and the changes her body would make as her child grew inside of her. Yes, we girls can get carried away with baby talk and baby showers, and we love to share our experiences with each other. Oh yes, Mary and Elizabeth must have got on very well, and then they was having in common talking about Mary's upcoming wedding to Joseph. All of us can relate. Elizabeth's husband Zachariah couldn't even get in on that conversation with his 2 cents. Come to find out, he couldn't talk because God had shut his mouth for a season. Yes, we can imagine the relationship between these two sister girlfriends. Not much has changed. Check out any obstetrician's office, and there you can find women with swollen feet and big bellies, strange cravings, just bonding over their future baby that they'll soon hold in their arms. I think it's a beautiful thing. They must be talking about diapers or Pampers or what kind of car seat to get. Do you breastfeed or bottle feed? What do your sonograms show? Which pediatrician to get? And all this is from women who don't even know each other. Okay, girls, it's time to be fair to the boys. We'll have to show in this lesson our catty side. You know that side. That side that says, if I were you, I would think twice about crossing me today. That's that side that existed between sisters before hormones had a name. That's the side that has days when nobody wants to talk to each other and you don't want company. Our girl Martha was having one of those days when Jesus and his boys rolled up on her. Now Martha had a sister named Mary. The scripture seems to indicate some stress between these sisters. Martha had somewhat of an anxious personality. She would have been the kind of sister that had everything in its place and had a place for everything. Mary the younger, on the other hand, seems to have that I'll get around to it sooner or later personality. Given the two distinct differences between the sisters, Martha would have been brewing and stewing about something at all the time. Mary would have been blissfully unaware of Martha's inner turmoil until Martha finally snaps. The interesting thing about snapping is the time, the place, or the company don't even register. Martha was just sick and tired of what she considered Mary's trifling ways, and she ends up snapping on Mary in front of Jesus. Before being too hard on Martha, sisters, let's consider the Marys in our life. We all have them. In our eyes, they will never measure up to our standards. But before we dump all over them and expose their faults to anybody who will listen, remember, none of us measures up to Jesus' standards. So let's be a little bit more patient with our Marys. And Marys, let's strive to help Martha out a little bit more. Consider this thought from Galatians 6:2. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Speaking of bearing one another's burdens, no one can dispute the fact that women work well together in groups. Although there are times when much of the confusion in our churches or workplaces can be traced to the tender gender, it must be equally noted that when sisters have a mind to, no one can beat them organizing. Beyonce said it all when she said, "Who runs the world? Girls." Without a doubt, many churches, homes, schools, clubs, offices, PTO, and organizations would suffer greatly without the presence of a group of non-nonsense women. Many times men think of programs, but it's the women who orchestrate them and carry them out. Look at any local church and prove the statement out. Women work the usher board. Women run the nursery. Women head the missionary. Women distribute the food from the storehouse. Women do the decorating and the planning. Women supervise the kitchen. Women do much of the singing, nursing, and teaching that goes on in the church. In fact, it was women that announced the resurrection of Jesus. Check it out for yourself. Luke 24 verses 1 through 10. So next time anyone complain about women in general, just try to run the show without them. Before there were men other than Adam, there had to be a sister on the scene. So as the kids would say, rock on, sisters, rock on. Thank you for listening to this short story, and tune in again for the next one.